Number 10.
Harvest Moon 64 is the entry of the long-running farm simulator RPG series on the Nintendo 64. There are many similarities with this version and the PS1 version. The objective of Harvest Moon 64 is to restore and maintain an abandoned farm left to the player by their grandfather. The player starts out with the bare minimum features for the farm, including an empty chicken coop and barn. But animals and house extensions can be purchased and tools can be upgraded over the course of the game. The local town, where most of the villagers spend their day, contains a church, a bar, bakery, a town square, a flower shop, a library, a tool shop, among other things. Unlike the original Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo, there is a limited amount of time to work in any given day as well as a limited amount of stamina for work. Many game features, such as character locations and which shops are open, vary depending on the current time and day of the week. The player starts with 5 basic tools to help restore the farm: a hammer, an axe, a sickle, a hoe, and a watering can. After a certain amount of usage, a tool will automatically upgrade, signified when the tool becomes silver and then later gold. Taking care of animals is an essential part of maintaining the farm. Animals, such as cows, sheep, and chickens, may be purchased at a nearby ranch. These animals require food and care, and if left unfed or left outside in the rain, it will become sick and eventually die unless the player gives it medicine. The player can own a dog and a horse. The dog originally belonged to the player character's grandfather and is a throwback to the original Harvest Moon. A horse can be obtained by visiting the nearby ranch and can be ridden or used as a portable shipping crate. Overall, Harvest Moon 64 is a very relaxing game like Animal Crossing. It has its own charming atmosphere of characters and activities. You can't experience everything the game has to offer in a single session, so it encourages a lot of replayability.
Number 9. Goemon's Great Adventure.
The sequel to Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, this 1999 classic returns the series to its 2D roots. The story is a zany pastiche of Japanese mythology, science fiction, and fantasy. You take on the role of mystical ninja Goemon and his friends to stop a ghost from the future from turning Japan into a ghost fantasyland. Gameplay consists of 2D platforming through action stages, a world map reminiscent of Super Mario World, and towns like you would expect in a Zelda game. You can do side quests in the towns to procure highway passes, which are this game's equivalent to stars in Mario. Unlike Mystical Ninja that came out 2 years prior, this game has two-player cooperative play. You can actually unlock 4 players later on in the game, and you have 4 playable characters to choose from. Each character has their own special moves and characteristics. For example, Goemon has a double jump and can throw fireballs or use his chain pipe as a hook shot. Ebisumaru is slower and doesn't jump as high, but he can create blocks and bounce like a ball. Sasuke is small and can throw bombs, and Yae has a bazooka. The soundtrack is also gorgeous. The themes are done in classical Japanese fashion with the combination of modern techno, R&B, rock, and electronic music for a truly eclectic palette. Just listen. The versions of this game released outside of Japan also cut out to vocal tracks. There is a main game theme song similar to something out of the Sonic the Hedgehog game and a theme for Impact that was in the first Mystical Ninja game.
Breakdown! 悪い奴らをぶち壊せ必殺
Great Adventure is sadly the last time the Mystical Ninja series was released outside of Japan. Since 1999, reviewers have considered it the best side-scroller for the Nintendo 64. Personally, I love this game, from the zany and off-the-wall humor, the colorful graphics, and the tight platforming gameplay that combines Castlevania and Super Mario with elements of The Legend of Zelda. This is one game no Nintendo 64 fan should miss out on.
Number 8. Mystical Ninja starring Goemon.
The first Mystical Ninja game on the Nintendo 64 is a single-player adventure game that plays similarly to The Legend of Zelda entries on the system. The story is as wacky as its sequel and involves aliens trying to turn Japan into a giant dance theater. You begin the game as Goemon and Ebisumaru and travel across Japan in an open-world map like Zelda. You gain new abilities, weapons, and characters. Instead of stages, there are dungeons much like a Zelda game and missions in the towns as well. At the end of a temple, you will also have a big boss battle in your personal giant robot Impact. Just like the sequel, the soundtrack is again gorgeous, once again combining classical Japanese instruments with modern music to create a unique sound, unlike other games on the system. This game is truly special. If you like Zelda games, good music, or unique experiences, you will love this game as much as many gamers did in 1997. Head back to feudal Japan with Goemon and friends and stop Peach Shogun aliens from turning Japan into an opera theater.
Number 7. Road Rash 64.
Road Rash is a pretty simple series of games. You select your racer, the type of bike you ride, and you compete for money. In Road Rash for the Nintendo 64, they continued this trend with three-dimensional graphics and licensed music. There are only a handful of tracks, but I enjoy them. The fun of the game is in the mayhem and chaos. You can knock your opponents out through repeated bashing with your bare hands or weapons. Watch out though, because your bike can be totaled, and you lose money on repairs. You can also get busted by the cops, and that costs money too.
Number 6. Mega Man 64.
Can you hear me?
Mega Man is a beloved series with a lot of different incarnations. Mega Man 64 was originally released for the PlayStation as Mega Man Legends. This version of Mega Man is a role-playing adventure game set in a distant future. The story has you battling pirates, exploring ruins, and creating new gear for Mega Man to use. The voice acting is surprisingly solid for the time, and the gameplay is very ahead of its time. If you like Mega Man and role-playing games, you'll love this one.
Roll! It's still active! The reactor's still running!
Great! What about the refractor?
It's here! It's a big one, too!
All right, now maybe we can finally get some money. Be careful.
Number 5. Gauntlet 64.
Gauntlet Legends was also released on the original PlayStation. However, what makes it unique on the Nintendo 64 is the ability to play 4 players simultaneously. You can choose from several classes of characters such as Warrior, Wizard, Valkyria, and Archer. The plot is simple. A demon has overtaken Summoner's Tower, and your heroes need to travel through several portals to stop his minions and restore peace. Each world has several stages and a final boss. You can also find a legendary weapon that will help you against the bosses in each world. This is a very simple arcade game that can be enjoyed with 1 to 3 friends at any time. As a kid, I loved just mindlessly slaughtering enemies and exploring the different worlds with my friends. You can also unlock legendary characters, which are a unique special class version of the roster. For the Warrior, you unlock the Minotaur. For the Wizard, you unlock the Jackal, and for the Valkyria, you unlock the Falconess and Tigress. For the Archer.
Number 4. Hybrid Heaven.
Players assume the role of Mr. Diaz, a synthetic human hybrid created by aliens. In the introduction, he turns on his masters when he kills a synthetic human intended to replace the president's bodyguard, Johnny Slater. Diaz finds himself in a massive underground installation created by aliens.
Last-minute discussions with the Russian president, who's scheduled to fly in on the same day. In a press conference yesterday, a confident President Weller stated to the media that on the coming 24th, the United States and Russia should be delivering a very Merry Christmas present to the world. In other news,
Hybrid Heaven takes many elements from standard 3D action-adventure games, such as Tomb Raider. The player can move in any direction, jump, crawl, climb, and shoot. The player must solve puzzles by disabling electronic weapons or through skillful maneuvering.
We shouldn't be seen talking, so I'll be brief. Let's go over this one last time. The substitution of the president will be executed the day after tomorrow in New York City. You are not to leave the president's side no matter what. Everything depends on that moment when there's no one but our operatives around him. If we miss this chance, it will throw off the timetable for the invasion. We can't afford any mistake. One more thing, don't forget to make contact with Mr. Diaz in New York. He'll bring the tools and the weapons you need. That'll be all. Let's make this work. But man, put some clothes on, will you? And don't forget to act like a human once you're overground.
Johnny, are you there? I guess you're out again today. Maybe you're busy, but are you doing okay? Well,
While voice acting is common in today's games, Hybrid Heaven was very advanced for a game in 1999 as it features a lot of audible dialogue. The plot is reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid.
I don't care how late you show up. Just meet me there, okay? I'll be waiting. Anyway, call me again when you get in.
Mr. Diaz, he's here.
Johnny? It is you, isn't it? Where didn't you recognize me? Is it just someone who looks like him?
So
Why did you shoot?
Not now. There's something wrong with Mr. Diaz. We've got to get him below ground.
There's a witness.
The evidence is gone. There's no trace left.
When battling a monster called a biological weapon in Hybrid Heaven, the game switches to a completely different mode. The player is constrained to a small room and can no longer jump, crawl, or climb. The monster and the player move around for strategic position in the room. When they are close enough and have built up enough energy, one or the other will decide to attack. At that point, time freezes and a single round similar to a role-playing video game turn ensues. The attacker picks an attack from a list, the defender picks a defense, and the results are displayed. Even though this game is simple compared to many games out now, I think it is a very interesting piece of history. It can become a bit repetitive, but the ideas presented here are still relatively unique. If you want to play an obscure N64 game, I recommend it.
Number 3. Perfect Dark.
Perfect Dark is the spiritual successor to Rare's 1997 first-person shooter GoldenEye 007. Perfect Dark shares many features with its predecessor and runs on an upgraded version of its engine. Unlike GoldenEye, there is a two-player cooperative campaign mode and a much bigger multiplayer.
What?
This game is one of the most technically advanced titles for the Nintendo 64, and requires an expansion pack to access the campaign mode and most of the multiplayer features. Shortly before the game's release, a feature that would have allowed players to place a photograph of their choice onto the face of their multiplayer character was cut due to sensitive issues surrounding the ability for players to attack images of real people. Perfect Dark features a multiplayer mode where up to 4 players and a computer control bots can compete against each other in different arenas. A split screen is used for multiple players. Players start a game unarmed and with a certain amount of health. Weapons and ammunition are placed. Once a player is killed, they are regenerated unarmed elsewhere in the arena. The objective of each game is determined by the scenario being played. Scenarios range from the traditional deathmatch mode, where players score points by killing opponents, to objective-based modes.
What are you doing in my lab?
Shut down the experiments.
I'll shut it down. My experiments!
The improved graphics, added cooperative campaign and expanded suite of weapons make this game superior to GoldenEye. My opinion. Unfortunately, Rareware was purchased by Microsoft, so this series has lain dormant for 23 years.
Number 2. Snowboard Kids Series.
This is 2 games that I believe deserve equal representation. The Snowboard Kids games took the concept of Mario Kart or Diddy Kong Racing and combined it with 1080 snowboarding. The music is cheery and the graphics are delightful. You can pick from any of the kids available and race down a variety of mountains to beautiful music. Like Mario Kart, there are a selection of weapons and items to use to give you an advantage and trip your opponents. When jumping off specific big jumps, you can do tricks. When you successfully do tricks, you get money that you can use to spend at the item box shops. This incentivizes the player to be stylish. The money can also be used at the shop to buy a superior snowboard. The Snowboard Kids games were a blast to play on a snow day when school was closed. The music is very nostalgic even at the time, and the gameplay is very soothing. Both games are great, so you can't go wrong with either one.
Number 1. Jet Force Gemini.
Jet Force Gemini is a 1999 third-person shooter developed and published by Rare for the Nintendo 64. The game follows the story of 3 members of a galactic law enforcement team as they try to stop a horde of drones led by an insectoid called Mizar. It features a single-player mode where the player must explore a galaxy and save tribals, a race of survivors who have been enslaved and imprisoned by Mizar, and places strong emphasis on shooting large numbers of enemies while dodging their attacks. The game also includes a multiplayer mode where 2 to 4 players can compete in traditional deathmatch games, inspired by 80s arcade games and more recent titles of the time, such as Super Metroid and Super Mario 64. Jet Force Gemini blends elements of both shoot-'em-up and action-adventure game. Works such as Aliens, Stargate and Battle of the Planets were also major influences. The game received generally positive reviews from critics. Praise was given to its detailed graphics and lifespan, while criticism was targeted at its confusing controls and insistence on having to save every tribal. While the game might seem primitive by modern standards, it has a very similar feel to other classic titles like Resident Evil 4. The Nintendo 64 was not dual analog, so you have to strafe with the C buttons and aim with the joystick. This can be confusing to newer players. To get around censorship issues of violence, the developers cleverly allowed you to splatter bug-type enemies. This allows the game to be cartoonishly gory, but because they're bugs it doesn't count as blood. This is a very satisfying way to make the game violent like an M-rated title. Unfortunately, because this was a Rareware-developed title, we will never get a sequel. This game is currently playable on the Xbox-only Rare Remastered Collection. I would recommend this to anyone who just wants to have fun and shoot some bugs. Thank you for watching. This has been 10 Nintendo 64 games that nobody talks about anymore.